Megan sat in the living room with a fresh Around the World magazine in her hands, waiting for the return of her husband, Caleb, who had promised to come with important news. She had already done everything around the house. She had made dinner, cleaned the house, and even fed Spike the turtle from the terrarium. There was nothing left for her to do. Even though it was a perfectly ordinary day, her mood was elevated. Caleb had promised that they would discuss their plans for the future. Besides, it was spring and the fresh, gentle April sun was beaming through the window, making her squint. She loved these quiet moments, feeling the warmth of the sun and the promise of new beginnings. Megan naively assumed that Caleb would tell her something important. She waited impatiently for him, thoughts of possibilities flashing through her mind. Maybe he finally found a new job, or maybe they could finally afford that little vacation she'd longed for. When Caleb finally got home, his face brightened and he ran into the room with delight on his face. "Honey, and I'm so happy," exclaimed Caleb. "My mom and sister decided to move in with us, and I missed them so much. If you only knew." Megan froze. Her smile turned into a grimace of bewilderment. There was no way she could share her husband's delight. She remembered the last time they'd visited and how chaotic the house had been. Megan had noticed that they were like locusts. They came, left a mess, and left without saying thank you. In fact, they were so tactless that Megan had a headache for days after their visit. But Caleb, full of delight, didn't notice or pay attention to the mask of sarcasm on his wife's face. He didn't notice the disappointment simmering beneath her calm exterior. He continued, "Yes, we have 4 rooms, and 2 of them are empty. I thought it would be nice to have them live with us. Do you mind? I know I don't." He smiled, his eyes filled with hope. "Well, they'll be here in a week. We need to get ready," Caleb finished, his excitement palpable. "Of course we'll get ready," Megan thought to herself, though a sense of dread never left her. She had already figured out the best way to greet her guests and slowly began to prepare. The surprise had to be such that the guests wouldn't be here for long. She was determined to make their visit as brief as possible, even if it meant some discomfort for everyone involved. The day of the guests' arrival came. Deborah and Christy arrived after Caleb had brought them from the station. Deborah looked around. "Wow, so much space and so clean," she said, already stepping her muddy shoes onto the clean mat and trying to get them off. Megan cringed at the sight, but kept her composure. "Hey, Meg." Christy unceremoniously threw off her coat and strode into the room as if she owned the place. Megan could already feel her nerves starting to give way. "Hello, guests." Megan tried to feign cordiality. "Will you be having dinner?" "Oh, no problem," Christy replied dismissively. "Hey, Caleb, do you have any money left on your card?" she asked, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "Well, there's some," he replied, embarrassed. "Where's all the food?" asked Christy, looking around the kitchen. "You're not going to believe this," Megan began, trying to keep her voice steady. "Today, while I was waiting for my relatives to arrive, someone came in and asked for money. And when I woke up, there was no money, no groceries, and even the jewelry box was gone." She tried to make her tone sound convincing, hoping to elicit sympathy. "That's amazing," Deborah said, her eyes widening. "Have you reported it to the police?" "There's no time for that," Megan replied. "For now, we'll have to make do with what we managed to gather for dinner. And you guests are going to help me cook something quick." She wanted them to feel that they had some responsibility for the household. An hour later, everyone sat down to dinner, eating hastily prepared dumplings. Only then did Megan begin to slowly inquire, "So what are your plans for staying here?" "Well, actually, we wanted to move," Deborah replied nonchalantly. "Caleb invited us." "And you're against it," interjected Christy, her tone defiant. "Oh no, of course not," Megan said, and thought to herself, "They're certainly cocky, but they'll be gone soon." She was already strategizing how to make their stay here as uncomfortable as possible without being overtly hostile. "Well, "Let's settle this right away," Megan said, trying to keep her voice neutral. "Do you have any money?" "Well, not much," Christy replied. "We were planning on living off you until we got a job." She said it like it was the most sensible thing in the world. "I'm going to have to go into austerity mode," Caleb said, looking uncomfortable. "My paycheck isn't until 2 weeks from now, and Megan's is almost a month away." He glanced at Megan, looking for support. "We also can't take out a loan. We already have 3, Megan added, her patience wearing thin. "Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention," Caleb said, embarrassed. "I bought a new cell phone today and paid the down payment on my future car." He looked at Megan, waiting for her reaction. Megan took a deep breath. "The refrigerator is already empty, and soon we'll need to pay the utility bill. If we don't, the electricity and gas could be cut off." She looked directly at Caleb, hoping he would realize the gravity of their situation. "Is this really such a crisis?" Deborah asked, disbelief sounding in her voice. "Yes, it is," Megan replied. "In a few days we won't even be able to buy bread." She wanted to make it clear how dire the situation was. "You've driven us almost to bankruptcy." Caleb suddenly raised his voice, directing his anger at Megan. "Why haven't you paid your utility bills?" "Hush, Caleb," Megan said sternly, not wanting to argue in front of her guests. She knew that any show of disassociation would only make the situation worse. "Well, I guess we'll head to bed," Deborah said, sensing the tension. "Yes, of course," Megan replied. "But I'm sorry, all the linens are in the wash. You'll have to sleep without it tonight." She knew it would be uncomfortable, but she didn't care. "No problem," Deborah replied, though there was a hint of irritation on her face. "By the way, I was thinking," Megan continued, "if the situation is that difficult, we could rent out one of the rooms. A friend of mine has some laborers looking for a place to live. I could bring them in and they'd put down a deposit for the room." She watched their faces carefully, savoring their discomfort. The relatives were silent. Finally, Deborah spoke. "We'll think about it." Her tone was hesitant, and Megan could see the wheels turning in her head. The next morning, Megan awoke to the sound of shuffling feet. As she came out of the bedroom, she saw Deborah and Christy packing their things. They were clearly in a hurry, and Megan couldn't help but smile. "Where are you going?" asked Megan, feigning surprise. "Megan, we're going home. We really only have enough money for the trip, and we don't want to burden you any further," Deborah said, trying to sound noble. "And Christy is allergic to sharing space with strangers," Christy added, as if that was a legitimate reason. "So you're running away," Megan said with a smirk. "Okay, have a safe trip." She tried to keep her voice even, but she couldn't hide the satisfaction in her eyes. Megan closed the door behind them and immediately ran to wake Caleb. "Wake up." The in-laws ran out. She couldn't hide her excitement. She got up while Caleb brushed his teeth, made coffee, and warmed up breakfast. She felt lighter than she had in the past few days. "Caleb, your in-laws suck," she said bluntly. As soon as things got good, they ran straight home. Caleb looked at her puzzled, not realizing what had just happened. "But we have money, the utilities are paid, and I made up the thief's story. I'm sorry, Caleb, but this is our house and ours alone. Say hi to your mom," Megan said with a satisfied smile. She knew it would take Caleb a while to figure things out, but she was willing to stand her ground. This was their home, and she wasn't going to let someone else run it.